Welcome to this Cruising Association webinar. My name's Simon and I'm a rat. The Cruising Association, founded in 1908, is Britain's leading organisation for cruising sailors. With well over 6,000 members around the world, we provide services, information, help and advice to sailors worldwide. We publish an almanac which covers the whole of the British Isles and the Atlantic seaboard of Europe and has local representatives all over the world. The CA has 17 UK and worldwide sections providing specialised knowledge and events wherever our members cruise. The Regulatory and Technical Services Group, known as RATS, is the team of CA volunteers who provide technical and regulatory advice to members. The government and commercial companies seeking views on changes that would affect recreational sailing, and those who lobby for changes to benefit cruising sailors. The presentation tonight is about the many interactions that are occurring between Orca and yachts off the Atlantic coast of Spain, Portugal and France, which are causing concern to yacht crews and scientists and fascination to the wider public. It will cover what has been learned from the data collected by the Cruising Association, marine biologists, and from the experience of skippers, and give some tips on how to minimise the risks. It is because of this desire to help sailors that last year CA RATS established a partnership with marine biologists in Spain and Portugal to gather relevant information so that the best possible advice can be given to crews sailing in the affected waters. Your speaker tonight is John Burbeck, one of the CA RATS who is leading a small team from the CA who are focusing on orca interactions. I will now hand you over to John.
Thank you very much indeed, Simon. Good evening, everybody. As Simon said, I'm John Burbeck. I'm an experienced sailor, cruising and racing over many, many decades. And I'm a volunteer. I give, like the rest of my team, we give of our own time for this initiative in order really to try and help sailors stay safe in these waters and minimize the damage to their boats. Now, because we're volunteers, we have to have this disclaimer about the advice and guidance we give. What about the facts? So what's happening? Well, it's the interactions in the waters of Spain, Portugal and France. That's the Atlantic waters. Started in 2020, quite a small number, but quite a few of the boats were damaged. This increased dramatically in 2021. Last year, fewer, but significantly more damage. And this year, the orca are even more active. First 3 months, dramatic increase. In April, it's only a slight increase, 9 this year as opposed to 8 last year. But May has been very, very busy already with 10 incidents. We've exceeded the total for May last year, and it doesn't look as though it's going to let up. So what's the nature of what goes on? Well, the orca are interested specifically in rudders of boats. They come in, they bump the rudders, they chew them, break them off. Here's 3 photographs of the sorts of damage that's being caused. The extent can be significant, and indeed last year there were 2 boats sunk. There's one of them, that's the one towards the end of the year, and already this year, we've had one sunk. It was under tow, having been significantly damaged by orca, and then it sank before they could get it into port. There have been 2 or 3 others where the boats have only really been saved because the life-saving services, sabotage, have been able to put self-powered pumps on board and pump out the enormous amount of water that's coming into the boats. So this is the nature of the interactions that are occurring. What we've done is we've been collecting data, and we've done some initial analysis of the first 100. So, sorry, that's the entire last year. You can see the extent of the damage. But if we took the 100, then of those that are damaged, it's only just over a quarter that are seriously damaged. About just under half only have moderate damage, and then just over a quarter there's no damage at all. I'll expand on this a bit later. So the nature of what's occurring with regard to the damage that's being inflicted on the boats varies significantly interaction to interaction. Unfortunately, of the 28 that were seriously damaged, 24 of them needed a tow into port. Another analysis shows that the skippers reporting an interaction during last year came from 10 different countries, and this year we can add a Polish skipper to that number. Where are they occurring? Well, this is the chart that you can find on the Cruising Association website that we've got, and I'll expand on that later. But you'll see that the majority are down near Gibraltar, 69. Then there are 43 off Galicia, northwest Spain, and the blue dash at the top, that's one last year, and that was off Brest. Now, if you go onto the website and get this chart up, you can press on any of those, the numbers or the blue markers, and as you keep going down, so you'll see on the left hand side I've come down to 24, and so the 24 interactions are just to the west of Gibraltar. Then on the right hand side, gone down again. When you see a blue marker with a white circle in, that's a specific interaction report. And so there's one that I've come on down to the 11th of April this year, interaction 127. So if I keep going down, what you'll find is there is the report. So every single interaction report that we have received at the Cruising Association is accessible to everybody through our website, and therefore it's being used by scientists and by sailors. The sailors are primarily trying to avoid problems, but you'll see in there an anonymized report, a response by the crew under behavior of orcas. Down to the right, they say it didn't feel like they were attacking us, but they blew air when they started to approach our stern. It's daytime, the moon was waning, etc., etc. So that information is available for every interaction report that we've received. Now, what have we learned from this? Well, the first is that the orca behavior varies dramatically. Let me give you the comment from the very last report received only yesterday. We had them very close, quite a large pod, checking us out from many sides. First just behind us, then they went away and came back again from several sides. When they came back, one orca was very close at the back, diving down around the boat. Then they left us. The report immediately before said the orcas arrived quickly and immediately attacked the rudders several times. They were hitting hard. So you can see in the last two reports, significantly different behavior by the orca. And that's what we've been seeing throughout the time we've been collecting the data. that it varies between what we describe as curiosity. It's an interaction. They've come to the yacht, and it is yachts, not motorboats they come to. And they're sometimes rubbing alongside them, sometimes just checking out. And then on other occasions, it's a sudden violent attack which causes significant damage. Sometimes these interactions are very quick. We said 10 minutes because we're not measuring anything less than 10 minutes, but some of the skippers have indicated that it's only a few minutes. And then we've had others where the orca are bumping the rudder, chewing the rudder for up to 20 minutes, then they go away, and they come back again for another 15, 20 minutes, go away, come back. From one talked about came back for half an hour. So we've had them from very, very short, very sharp experiences to extended well over an hour, And the numbers change, the number of orcas. Sometimes it's just one orca comes in, crashes the rudder and leaves. Other times it's a large group. And some of the skippers describe adult orcas teaching the juveniles how to do it. That the adults perhaps come in, then they stand back, and then there's communication, and then juveniles come in to do the damage. And the interactions take place during day and night, slightly more dawn and dusk. But of course, at night, if you do need help, it's more difficult. So that's a bit of a high-level analysis of the interaction reports that we've received. Now, we've also set up a system to try and collect control data. So what we've done for particular, quite restricted parts of the seas, we've collected reports from people who have not had interactions with orca. So they've passed through the waters and they haven't had a problem. We're interested to know what they've done, something that may be different, because if they've come through the water without the experience, then perhaps others can copy that. And to date, by the end of last year, we'd had nearly 260 reports. And we've just started them again because the current activity is to the west of Gibraltar in quite a confined area. We've asked anybody passing through that area to give us information on the routes they take, any actions they're taking to try and prevent an interaction, so that we've got all that on record. And once again, all these reports are available to anybody who wants to access them. So that's what we've learned so far. Now, what about the animals themselves, the orca? Well, they are spectacular creatures, and in most parts of the world, people pay to see them, pay to get close to them. People kayak with them. Fascinating creatures, very intelligent, top predator, good team worker. They excellent communication. What many people are not aware of, though, is that actually there are two ecotypes. There are resident orcas and transient orcas. And the experts say that the last time they had a common ancestor was hundreds of thousands of years ago. So they've developed separately. The transient orcas tend to be bigger, stronger, and they're the ones that you see on these fascinating nature programs, hunting whale, seal, and sea lions. They eat warm-blooded animals. That's the transients. You'll be able to recognize them because they've got like this orca in this photograph, a more sharply pointed and taller dorsal fin. Their language is different, their behavior is different. The other type of orca are the resident ones, and the resident ones tend to stay in an area, hence their name, and they eat fish. They're slightly smaller and they've got more rounded dorsals. The particular orca that are doing these interactions off the Gibraltar Straits are it's a subpopulation called the Gibraltar Straits orca, and they're resident and they're fish eating, which means it's slightly safer for people if we do end up in the water, any of us end up in the water close to them. Unlikely that they'll be interested because we're not fish. But they're in the business of hunting fish. These particular Gibraltar Strait orca have been studied by marine biologists for decades because they're critically endangered. There are 35 of them, and that population hasn't really increased over many years. This is the picture of all bar one of the individuals that are actually doing the interactions. So there are 35 in the subpopulation, but there are only 15 that are actively involved in interacting with yachts. It started off with 3 in 2020, increased to in 2021 to 14, and then last year 1 more. Now this is a year out, and it's mostly in Portuguese because it was done by the Portuguese marine biologists. But you can see here that actually, take the top left, there's a grandmother who is in the top left who's taught 3 of her children, and one of them in turn has taught 2 of the grandchildren. In the middle there's a single orca that isn't related to any others. And so there are 15 of the 35 that are actually involved in it. They're known, they've got photographs of them, are all identified. So that's what we know. What about the fiction as well? Because of the spectacular nature of this, and because they vary so much, the interactions, there are plenty of people telling others that they know what the reason is, or they believe they know. So if anybody says to you, orca attack the yachts because, or they know exactly how to avoid an interaction, it's fiction. Why do they do it? The answer is no one knows. No one really knows. The most likely is that they like playing with yachts. So they've spun yachts around. They've pushed them at up to 7 or 8 knots. They've chewed them. They've bumped into them. It's always the rudders that they go for, and they seem to lose interest when the rudder gets broken off. They chew it a bit after it's left the yacht. And we've got plenty of experience of knowing that the orca play. The ones in captivity do, but in the wild, there was off the west coast of the States, there was a group that started doing headstands. That's the best way of describing it. Head down, tail up in the air. Why were they doing it? Just because they could. There's another group that used to swim around with a fish on their nose. Salmon. Why were they doing that? No one knows. And at the moment, we don't know, or the marine biologists tell us they don't know why they enjoy playing with yachts. Another possible belief at the beginning was because there were 3 sort of juveniles, or they were young, very young adults, started this in 2020. One of them had a serious injury that had clearly healed. And there was a belief, which we haven't dismissed, that they were responding to an unpleasant experience with a yacht, and sort of being aggressive, and that's why they started these interactions but we don't know. And then the final popular cause is because this started after the close down because of the pandemic. So during 2019, early 2020, because of lockdown, very few yachts were passing through. In fact, there wasn't much marine traffic at all passing through the area. And the orca use sound to hunt, or particularly in that area. The resident orcas use sonar to hunt. And there is a thought that when all the shipping came back, and particularly the frequencies that yachts give off, that it was too loud for them, or it was inconveniencing them in some way. But the reality is we don't know. So given that we don't know why, it's very difficult to stop. So at the moment, the thinking is along the lines of, let's try and keep yachts safe, or yacht crews safe, and the yachts undamaged. So how do you stay safe? Well, mostly the larger yachts seem to be safer. There are fewer attacks on the larger yachts, but recently there have been, this year, there have been 2 or 3. So a note of caution on that. Shallow water, that's definite. And in fact, we're getting the reports of boats that are passing through the affected areas at the moment are reporting that they're close inshore, and at the same time, they're hearing calls, emergency calls from yachts that are having interactions that are 2 or 3 or 4 miles further offshore. So shallow water definitely works, particularly when you're in the area off the to the west of the Gibraltar Straits, where they are at the moment, and close to shore, less than 2 miles off. I know that means that you run the risk of fishing pots and the nets, the farm nets off southern Spain, but the reality is that's where it's safe. And then avoid the most active periods. We've now got sufficient information that will enable a crew to establish where the orca are and what they're doing. So the 2 particular what's the word I want, sources of up-to-date information are the traffic lights, and I'll come to that in a moment, and the sighting apps, and the apps are for smartphones. Leading to that, so Simon talked about the work we're doing with GTOA. They're the marine biologists, and it's with them that we've set up the reporting process and the analysis process. They're providing the expertise on the orcas. We're providing as much as we can with regard to the boats. So it's a good partnership. They're the 2 websites, both of which give you access to large quantities of up-to-date information, and they're accessible to everybody, and we're constantly updating it, both organizations constantly updating it. Now, one of the things that GTOA set up is the traffic light system. So this is one from February, and I've highlighted off west coast of Portugal in green, and then off the Gibraltar Strait in amber. 3 weeks later, it's red off Portugal, still amber off Gibraltar Straits. In April, it was green again off Portugal, and now it's red off the Gibraltar Straits. The latest one is still red off the Gibraltar Straits, but it's now amber off Faro. So this is online, and they're being updated constantly as the activity of the orcas change. What else is there? Other resources, applications. This is for smartphones or anything that will any computer. The two that one is the GT Orcas one, run by GTOA, who I'm our partner. The other one is the Orcas. Now both of these apps will take two things. They'll take live sightings of orca, and they'll also take reports of interactions. We ask that you submit a report to us as well, because we'll take more detail. But what it means is, if you're on one of these apps, you can find out where the orcas are, where they're being sighted, and also find out where people are having interactions. Once the orca are in an area, they don't tend to travel too much. The most they can, when they start to move, they travel about up to 100 miles a day. But at the moment, if the sightings will all be off Gibraltar Straits, so the west coast of Portugal will be safe at the moment. Another two facilities are the Telegram. We've got Orca Discussions, and I think they've got several hundred members, quite a new facility, got several hundred members already and growing. And the Facebook Orca Attack Reporting is the most popular. I'm told it's got 29,000 members. So there's a lot of discussion, a lot of information there. It's immediate. So that if you're debating or considering or planning traveling through an area, this is where you get the real up-to-date information from those who are experiencing it. So what happens? So you've made your planning, you're doing everything you can, but they've come up and they've interacted with you. Stop. The advice at the moment is stop, because that calms them down. At the moment, there's an alternative which is being proposed and being tested, which is head for the shore as fast as possible. There is some evidence that the faster you move, the less damage. But at the moment, most of the evidence with regard to reducing damage supports stopping. Let go of the steering. That's one of the biggest risks. Biggest risk to people are from not from being eaten by the orca, but from being seriously injured because of the force with which they hit the boats, being knocked across a cockpit, breaking an arm, or more seriously, fracturing a skull. Very real risks. So let go of the steering. Then if facilities or the environment and the weather and everything else, the state of the sea permits it, reverse with caution. This seems to work. The reason is that the orca are only interested in the rudder. If you're going backwards, they can't swim backwards. So they come round and they bump the bow. They're not interested in that. And reversing either in a straight line or a circle seems to work. We're doing some more work to find out at the moment, more research to find out whether it's better actually to motor in a circle or a straight line. Another one that definitely works is making sudden loud noises. Any sudden loud noise can drive them off. And surprisingly, releasing sand. and you need to be stationary to do this, but pour the sand between the orca and the rudder. And what it does, because they are using acoustics, sonar, to find the rudder when they get that close, what it seems is that the sand, like chaff for aircraft, it creates a confusing pattern for them, so they can't recognize the rudder and they lose interest very early on. Sand doesn't do them any harm, doesn't need to be enormous amount, it needs to be just poured around the rudder. That definitely works. We've got plenty of reports where people have done that and the orca leave. Then follow the safety protocol. I'll bring that. And what we urge you to do, as soon as it's all calm and got things under control again, is submit an interaction report on our website so that all the experience and knowledge and data is available to others. There's the safety protocol. I won't go through it, but that's on various websites, and it's what we've learnt. We being the marine biologists and sailors, so that we're confident about that at the moment. We'll update that as if we learn anything else. What are we doing? So I've told you what we know. What we're doing is we're maintaining our website. In fact, we updated it again significantly this morning. It's in 4 languages, so that French, Spanish, and Portuguese, as well as English. We're continuing to publicize the risks and the need for the reports, taking the risk for us. We're still receiving interaction reports where it would appear that the skipper and crew were surprised at the risk, and where it would appear that they're not taking the advice that's about, which would have meant that they could have avoided interaction. So what we're trying to do is spread the message, and we're very grateful that you're listening to this, and we encourage you to take away what you've learned and speak to everybody who might be sailing in the area, and then persuade them to get on the websites and the apps and help to keep themselves as safe as they can do. We also need plenty of reports. We're getting increasing requests now from researchers, and say all the information is available. That's how we're going to find the final solution, I suspect, that will make boats safer. So we're going to continue the online reporting. We're encouraging more detailed analysis, and we're testing hypotheses such as, is motoring in a circle better than motoring in a straight line, and monitoring whether driving away at speed is a better solution than stopping the boat standing still. So that's what we know. The Portuguese have become very concerned about this, and they ran at the beginning of March. The Portuguese government, the Portuguese Navy, ran a whole-day conference which we were invited to. The findings were that they're going to encourage sightings and interaction reports, which is what we're doing in this presentation. They're going to try and set up an alert system that will work in real time, run by the Portuguese Navy. They're going to research and, well, they're going to encourage research and experimentation into acoustic devices, because it's believed that's the area, because they're such animals that use their hearing and the sonar so much. It's believed that that's where the answer is going to lie. And then, of course, what they're saying is the Portuguese going to make sure that the safety protocol, which I talked about earlier, is constantly updated as soon as we learn more. We're getting to the point where the amount of data that we've getting holding different organizations should be starting to give us enough information to create new bits of advice for the safety protocol. So, having heard this, if you were anywhere else in the world, you'd be delighted if you saw that. If you're off France, Portugal, and Spain on the Atlantic side, I think, or we think, you'd be very wise to be very worried about it. And we would hope that you will have done all your research before you go to try to be as safe as you can. So thank you very much indeed for listening. And as I said, please take this away and speak to other people. And what are your questions?
Thank you very much, John. We've got lots of questions that have come in. We've got 36 online questions, and we've got some questions that were asked beforehand. We will attempt to get them all in. There are some duplicates, and I'll attempt to bring them all together. But if John can keep his answers short, we might get all through them all.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll try my best, Simon.
Somebody says, I'm keeping some of these anonymous, well, all of them anonymous, simply because one or two things that might be not quite legal.
Yep.
Somebody saying, we bought pingers, and since we use them, we only met 2 dolphins while sailing in Galicia and Portugal. How effective are they to keep away the orca?
Right. Well, first of all, at the moment, the pingers that are on the market are illegal in Spain and Portugal. That's the first observation, because they're not designed for frequencies that are safe for orca. We've had several reports of boats that have been significantly damaged, even though they had pingers. So at the moment, if you look at the reports, the evidence, there is no evidence that these illegal devices work.
Okay, great. Is there any connection between the attacks and black anti-fouling, or coloured anti-fouling, or striped anti-fouling?
We're not sure. There is, if you compare the interaction reports and the non-interaction reports, there's a significant difference in the percentage of boats that are damaged. I can't remember the exact figure, but say it's about 3 times the number of boats that pass through the area with black anti-fouling that don't have interactions. It's the reverse for coppercoat. So what we can't find at the moment is the percentage of yachts that have black anti-fouling. So it's one of these ones that we're looking at. It's a possible, but I won't put it any more than that at the moment. Until we can find out what percentage of boats have got black anti-fouling as opposed to blue or any other colours, then we can't confirm it. What we do know, though, is that it won't be the colour of the anti-fouling that attracts the orca to the boat, but it might have influenced how much damage they do when they arrive.
Okay, thank you. What has been done by government since 2020 to secure the safety of sailors and their boats?
Yeah, well, what happened in 2020 and 2021 was the Spanish government banned yachts under 15 meters from some of their waters. The 2020, it was off Galicia. You had to be quite a few miles out. And then in 2021, it was off Faro, and between Faro and Gibraltar, roughly. Last year, there was no ban. So that's one action. But as the Portuguese government appear to be taking it seriously, judging by the whole day conference that they held. We haven't had any recent updates on that. We're setting up meetings with Portuguese sailing organisations next week, and we'll get some update there. But we know they're worried, even if only because of the demand on their life-saving services.
Right. Okay. The scientists mentioned specifically that the animals do not attack. There's no aggression. The wording of this is very disturbing.
Yeah, well, our position is it's clear from some of these reports that it's an attack. They've come in, the orca have come in fast. Well, I told you the 136, which was the orcas arrived quickly and immediately attacked the rudders. They were hitting hard. That's an attack. But not every interaction is an attack. Plenty of reports from skippers said it's clear that they were playful. We weren't frightened. We weren't worried and they didn't do much damage. So it varies. So my position is quite clear. Their interactions, sometimes they're playing, sometimes they're attacking.
Okay. Is there any estimate or any data on the percentage of yachts transiting Galicia that have had an interaction?
No, this is one of the things we're actually trying to work on. But one of the troubles is to get the only way we're going to get it is use polished AIS data. So we've got to get AIS data for particular periods, remove all the fishing boats and motorboats. That's expensive. And we've had a couple of organisations promise to do this for us, because bear in mind we're just a members association, but they haven't yet come up trumps. We're still working on it. If we can get AIS data, which shows how many yachts are passing through the area, and then compare it with the number of interactions, we'll get a figure. At the moment, GTOA are using about 1%, but we don't think that it's a bit of a guesstimate.
Somebody says the problem is that everyone is trying to gain data, with the result that no one has all the data, and that orcaiberia.org is the official channel.
Right, their data since this time last year is the data we're collecting. That's the data. They're also collecting reports off social media, but that's not data. If there's any, if we've got a properly reported incident, if they get it first, they give us a copy, but 80 to 90% of what they get in terms of data comes through us. So our website is linked automatically to theirs. So what you see on their website, the vast majority has come through our reporting process. That was the agreement that when we set it up, we wanted to they were capturing data, but only about the orca. We wanted to capture data that was useful for yachts people. And so the agreement was that we would capture more than what they wanted plus what we needed and feed it automatically to them. And that's how it works.
Right. Somebody says, according to the statistics in regards to following the protocol, you're better off not following it. Will the protocol be revised?
If the evidence shows that, definitely, yes. Yeah, no one's wedded to the protocol. It's what at the moment, the best evidence is. Yeah.
Okay. You've already said, John, that scattering sand into the water appears to deter the orca from interacting with the boat. The questioner used attacking. Are there any other items, such as bleach, that might be effective in dealing with aggressive orca?
No. People empty their toilets. They pour bleach. They pour diesel. None of it works. because it gets diluted too quickly. At the moment, sand is the only thing that we've got evidence that definitely works. And you don't have to carry a ton or two in the cockpit. You know, it's a few kilograms appears to work. It'd be, I'll just tell a story from one of the reports. What we've learnt is that the orca are very precise about the way they come into rudders. This particular boat has 2 rudders, and it's got 2 propellers astern of the rudders. The orca always come in from astern, so they're coming in looking for the rudders. The propellers were stationary, and they came in and they could tell from their sonar that there was something between them and the rudder. And for well over an hour, they came in, examined what it was in front of them, which wasn't the rudder they were expecting, and they did no damage. And in the end, they got bored and left. So what we're learning is that things between the approaching orca and the rudder will help, and the sand works.
Okay. The most effective thing to discourage damaging orca interactions appears to be return to base scuba pyrotechnics. Those are explosive charges you drop into the water to call scuba divers back in an emergency. I understand these are illegal, but why have other sound-related products that are orca-specific frequency, maybe an alarm call, not being tried?
No, the answer is that's what the Portuguese, certainly from their conference, what they and others are keen to develop is a safe device, acoustic device that drives them off. That's in the right sort of frequency, because they hunt using sonar. And if you've got to chase a tuna go very, very quickly. What they know is if you damage the hearing of a resident orca, then it can't hunt properly and starves to death, really. So that's why the government, Spanish, Portuguese governments, are very much against acoustic devices, the currently available acoustic devices, because of the damage that they may cause.
Another questioner, and you'll have to forgive my Spanish accent if it is indeed Spain. Yes, it is. We're currently moored in Alcadesa Marina La Linea, directly adjacent to Gibraltar. We're looking to transit the Gibraltar Straits and head up to the Canaries, but currently we cannot see any safe passage via the Gibraltar Straits to Tangier and Cap Spartel. Do you have any suggestions how we can leave our current marina and start our planned passage?
Right. Well, watch the reports of the locations of the orca. We would expect them to move west and north next month. And already they've moved slightly north. They were much closer to the African coast. Now they've moved north up close to the Spanish coast. We would now expect them, say, to the next 2 or 3 weeks to move west. You therefore might think, because I'm wise enough to know that if I recommend it and you do it, then I'll be in trouble in the future. You might think you might be able to find a safe route close, hugging the African coast when the orca move west. There are certainly, if you look at the maps of activity, which they're on both the GTOA site and ours, you'll see that there are periods where they've moved significantly down the coast. They come back again later, but there will be a period in the next few months where there'll be almost no activity in the Gibraltar Straits because they've moved.
Okay, thank you. Can adult orca be differentiated from the pups in the interactions? And if so, how?
Only by size. Plenty of crews have been able to say it's the bigger ones and the smaller ones. One of the changes we made to our website reporting facility today was to capture for the future whether it's more adults and how many juveniles, because that will be useful for the marine biologists to better understand which creatures are more active than others.
Okay. There's another question, or two or three questions that ask why the orca that are doing the attacking haven't been tagged so they can then be monitored electronically, as happens with great whites and whales.
Yeah, I understand that. And indeed, there is a tagging initiative that's been started. There's a marine scientist who started that. But they've only tagged a few, or are in the process of tagging a few, in order to find out where they're going. But the tags will only last for a few months. The problem with orca is that they slough off their skin all the time, which is one of the reasons why they're so smooth and so fast. That means that if you can't stick a tag or a tracker on, the only way to fasten a tracker on is to actually effectively bolt it to their dorsal fin. That even that won't stay for very long, so it's a few months. And it always runs the risk of infection, and there are a few that have been quite badly scarred by this. But it's being done. There's a small project to see whether that helps understanding of their behaviour.
Somebody else would be interested to know the number of interactions at night, as he or she is planning a number of overnight passages, or indeed whether passing through high-risk areas at night is actually preferable.
No, not really. It's slightly less activity, but it's marginal. Slightly less activity. Yeah, and the risk is because you really need to stay close to the shore, and in shallow water. Then the risk on those coasts is fishing pots, etc., rocks. So it's you takes your choice.
Another questioner says orca attacks are not aggressive. They look more like play, or better, a challenge. Rudders are not bitten off, but rather torn out. Damaged rudder pieces floating in the water are not interesting to them. What do you do when children make trouble? The best solution is to give them something to distract them. So what do you think about giving them something to play with, like beach balls or so on?
Well, I'm not sure anybody's tried that, but along those lines, what it was thought was towing a dinghy, an inflatable, would give them something to play with, but it doesn't work. It doesn't seem to work. They sometimes go and scout it out, but no, they're after the rudders. They know exactly what they're after. So yeah, it might work, but I wouldn't hold out a lot of hope.
Okay. The other question I think we've answered already, but do we have experience with the Orciness app? There exist some active maps with interactions with orca, i.e. Well, those are ours websites. Do you have any idea which are the most trustful, or where are recorded the most interactions?
The most interactions are GTOA. Right. The problem with the right, if you want to search back, the only way that I'm aware of you can do that is through our or GTOA websites. So we've got the history. If you want to know what's happening now, then what we're saying is the use one of those two apps, GT Orca or Kindness, or the brain's gone now, the Facebook website, Facebook sites, or the Telegram sites, because they have got people reporting what's happening now. So they are spot on current.
Mhm.
But because there's so many messages on them, what happened 2 or 3 weeks ago is likely to be lost. And certainly what happened this time last year won't be there.
Okay. So the message is that social media is great, but it's better if you can report it on our website or Orca Iberica, and then we can capture detailed information for scientific analysis.
That's absolutely right, yeah.
A few people are asking if the orca are following their food, which is tuna.
Yeah, they will do. That's why I say that so the tuna spawn in the med and then come out around about now. And so they're hovering outside they're hovering to the west of the Gibraltar Straits, waiting for the tuna, which should start coming out next month. And as the tuna go west and then north, the orca will go with them. It will then get slightly more interesting, because the orca split in the last couple of years. They've split up. So you'll end up with more than one group, we suspect, because that's certainly what happened last year. And that's a bit more challenging. But at the moment, the expectation is that they'll move with the tuna west, probably next month.
Mm-hmm. A comment that they probably love the quietness of the corona lockdowns in the Strait, and then the attacks started after the heavy traffic started again.
Yeah, well, that's what I said. I mean, that's what a number of people think that, and we can't disprove it at the moment.
Mm-hmm. Is anybody looking at structural measures to the rudder stocks to limit water ingress, i.e. the boat builders, etc.?
We're not aware at the moment. I'm not saying no, but we're not aware at the moment.
There's another question about the attacks. The boats that were sunk, are they sunk because the rudder is damaged and there's water ingress from that area?
Yes, it's because the rudder stock is so badly damaged that the hull split. And that's also true of several boats that were saved. That the hits, the blows to the rudder, and shifted the whole mounting in the hull, split the hull.
Right. Another comment. So the best thing to do, since you have no idea of the cause and solution, is to condemn the violence against these animals that I've witnessed in the community. An anonymous attendee.
Yep.
You've mentioned that shallow is safer. Do we have any records of interactions much further out?
Oh yeah.
Are they following the standard cruising routes more than the non-standard ones?
Right. I don't want to give, because I haven't done the research on how many miles out, but you can see it on the charts. They're mostly closer to, because that's where the tuna. So the tuna stick in deeper water, 40 to several hundred meters deep, because the tuna are safer there. And so that's where they swing around the south of Portugal and then north in the deeper water further out. So it's sort of 3 or 4 miles out to probably 20, but don't quote me on the 20. You'll see it on the charts. Mm-hmm. Because the when the Spanish government banned yachts off Galicia in 2020, the outer limit, I think, was about 20 miles. You had to be more than that out, because the legislation they passed banned the smaller yachts closer inshore than that.
Have you a view on whether they are as interested in the wind vane rudders? This person has heard of boats where the hydrovane rudder has been ignored while the main rudder has been attacked.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. Yep. But sometimes the gear, the linking gear, gets broken. Yep. And there are one or two boats that have, when their rudders, the main rudder's broken off, have been able to get back into port using the hydrovane rudder.
Right.
Yep.
More comments about harmless flashbangs, firecrackers, smoke or firecrackers as deterring measures.
Yeah, well, you know, they're illegal and they run the risk of harming the orca.
Mm-hmm. Has the behaviour been observed anywhere else in the world?
No, not this behaviour, no.
Sound pingers, do they work? No, they don't, or limited. Are there any limitations on passages being imposed by insurance companies?
Well, not yet. But that doesn't mean that they might not at some stage. We've, as a team, we've thought that we perhaps ought to start discussions with the insurance companies to see what they're thinking, so that we can advise yachts people which way the insurance companies might be moving. Yeah, because we quite understand that they might start to load excess in that for people sailing in that area.
Yeah. When driving away at speed, how fast is fast, given the speed that orcas can do? Right.
It seems that if you can do 10 knots or a bit more, that the damage, that's the historical study shows that the damage is slightly less. Now, there's currently some work being done at the moment by a scientist in the Gibraltar Strait area. So I don't know what the findings are. I just know that it's being researched, and we're waiting the findings with interest.
Have there been any reports about interactions taking place at the same time in different places?
Yeah.
So has the group of the 15 interacting orcas been observed to split up?
Yeah, the answer is yes, which is what I mentioned earlier. Later in the season, they split up, and then we have had a couple of occasions where up to 300 miles apart there have been almost simultaneous interactions. So you know, I'm advising everybody to keep monitoring. You know, don't accept what happened last week and the week before. You want to know what's going on now.
Is there any experience of sailing in convoys through the area?
Yeah, and it varies between the orca go from yacht to yacht to possibly a larger yacht driving them off a smaller yacht. Certainly motorboats seem to dissuade them. So if you travel in convoy with a motorboat, that might work.
Do you have any data on which months the orca are most active or more active?
Yeah, that's on both websites.
Right.
It's fully. The simplest way is just to look at the GTOA website, and they've got it month by month. And for ours, you just need to put the dates in on the top of the website, top of the search engine on our map, and it'll show you all the interactions in that period.
Mm-hmm. Another question about how far offshore do we see the interactions? Is it just limited to the continental shelf? Are there reports from sailors going the long route through Madeira and the Azores?
No, nothing as far out as that. No, nowhere near. No.
Is going through the French canals a good way of avoiding them?
Yeah, yes, it is. Yeah. Provided, what is it? 5.2 meters or something, isn't it? One of our colleagues was talking about it earlier this week. I think it's 5.2 or 5.3 meters is your width, and of course you've got a draft limitation.
Yes.
But yeah, the answer is that's a good way, except later in the season when you've still got a risk in Biscay. If you look at the interactions in the past, when they go north, they go all the way into Biscay.
Any recommendations on what to use to make the loud sudden noise?
Right. Well, the legal one is something called an oikomi pipe, which they use. They beat them and they keep dolphins and orca off the fishing nets off North America. Banging and crashing pans seems to work. A crash tack where the genoa really filled with a bang. These sorts of noises all seem to have worked.
Do we know if all the interactions are with the same population, i.e. Gibraltar through to the British coast?
Yeah, as I showed on the slide, it's the 15. It's not even the whole subpopulation. It's the 15.
Do you have or collect any data about boats with ultrasonic anti-fouling devices?
Not yet. No. It's a good question.
We'd be interested in getting the data.
We collect other, so yeah, I'll speak to my technical colleagues. Yeah. Soon, not at the moment.
Why do you think they ignore motorboats?
We don't know. Same as we don't know why yachts. Now, there are some stories of them interacting with the very small fishing craft from North Africa, and they've been doing that for some time, but they don't report it. Now, but what they do they don't interact with the boats, the fishing boats, but they do. They steal the tuna off the lines of the fishermen. So the line, because they can't use nets for various reasons, because of just to preserve the tuna population, they have to line fish, and the orca steal the tuna off the lines. They've been doing that for some time. So we presume it's either the sound of the engine or the shape of the rudder, or they know that motorboats have more solid rudders that don't break. We really don't know.
Professional skipper recommended this questioner that he carries a few gallons of white vinegar to tip overboard, rather like the sand, due to make this passage in a 16-meter sailboat.
Well, as I said, what we found with liquids is they dilute so much that it doesn't work. Because sand interferes with their sonar system, it does.
Are boats with thin keels and spade rudders more vulnerable than long-keeled boats?
Right. Well, once again, it's the comparative data. What percentage of boats have spade rudders, and therefore what percentage of boats that are interacted have spade rudders? We've got to have that comparison, and we haven't got enough source data to be able to say that with confidence. What we can say, though, is that the keel doesn't seem to be important at all. It's the rudder. And what we can say is that for a number of reasons, partly construction, that if you've got a spade rudder and you have an interaction, and if it's a serious interaction, a violent one, the chances of serious damage is very high.
Yeah. There appears to be a company who's suggesting they've developed an acoustic startle to deter orcas. They're peer-reviewed and published research. Who at the Portuguese Navy can they offer their technology to?
Pass. I don't know.
We haven't got any contacts in the Portuguese.
We haven't got
Portuguese
contact
Navy.
with the Portuguese Navy. No. While the government department was the equivalent to Department of the Environment, and they right. Come up with the next question. I'm just going to see if I've got access to a note I took. It's the ICMF, Dr. Marina from the Institute. I can't remember what ICMF stands for, but she was the lead doctor from the Institute, effectively as their Department of the Environment. And she summed up. And so she was the one who said that research on acoustic devices. So I would suggest she's a good starting point. There'll be someone in that institute that would know where to go.
Mm-hmm. This is a person who says that the way the percentages were represented was misleading. You have 400 reports. Of those, only 26 boats were significantly damaged. This is 6%. Minor damage was roughly 70 out of 400, which is 17%.
Right. What I showed was analysis of the first 100 detailed reports that we have received. So these interactions have been going on since 2020, and they were GTOA were recording what was going on. It's just short of a year ago, we launched our much more comprehensive data gathering capability, and that analysis was of the first 100. So it's 28 of the first 100, not 28 of the whole of all the interactions that there have been. And indeed, we're now around about 130. So that we've recorded.
What are we doing to extend collecting data from all boats? Is there fishing boats or larger vessels that have been hit, damaged, and they don't seem to be reported, or is it too few to worry about?
Well, we're not hearing of them. We're not GTOA aren't hearing of them. When we go with various one of our members and GTOA staff occasionally go to ports and speak to those who've had their boats damaged and say, is there anybody else around who's had their boat damaged? And we get more reports that way. We're not getting anything at all at the moment about motorboats.
Another comment. Sorry guys, but I'm worried about the science here. All sounds a bit sensationalist. What we need to know is how many boat movements occur in these areas in relation to the number of interactions. Yeah. I suspect the risk is minimal as interaction versus number of boat movements. Yeah. If you did your analysis on driving on the M25, I suspect no one would dare use it.
And the answer is, we don't know, as I said earlier, because we haven't got comparative data. We're trying to get AIS data to be able to establish that position. Yeah, because we'd like to be able to advise yacht crews.
And there's another comment on a similar vein. Are the number of incidents high enough to have a statistical significance?
Yeah, that's right.
Can you expand on the copper coke thoughts so far?
No, it's certainly the same as I said, that there are more proportionately more boats having an uneventful, non-interaction voyage through the area than some of the other. Sorry, fewer boats having interactions, fewer copper coke boats having interactions. Now, because what we can't do at the moment is remove the possibility that the skippers of boats with copper coats are much more cautious and only travel when they know it's safe, etc. We have to remove those sorts of factors. But all we've observed is that a lower percentage of boats with copper coat seem to have interactions.
You mentioned the boats above 15 meters in length were less at risk. What was the main damage to the two boats that were sunk? The whole breach, keel detaching, damage around the rudder posts?
Yeah, it's the same. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it was. Yeah.
In areas in Spain, Portugal, we see lots of smaller and larger fishing boats. Are they under attack? I think we know, but we don't know.
No.
What do the fishermen do to avoid attack?
No. Well, no, we don't know. And it might be that they've never, well, there doesn't appear to be a history of them attacking the Portuguese and Spanish fishing boats. You know, we'd have heard it somewhere by now. You know, we've got enough local contacts that someone would have told a story or two if it was happening.
Do we have a rough idea of accidents per individual, presumably orca? Are there some individuals that are particularly dangerous and other less so?
Probably. I haven't got that information. GTOA might have it. I mean, we don't have all the details about all the orca for every interaction. We've got some excellent video, excellent photographs, or they've got them. I mean, they have all the analysis of the orca behavior. They've got all the evidence for that, you know, because we're focusing on the yachts and the yacht crew safety. So they've got some excellent photographs. They've got excellent video. But no, I know from the reports that, particularly the ones at night, for example, that we don't know which orca are involved. But I suspect GTOA will have some that are more active than others.
Hey. Do we have any data yet to understand the percentage of attacks on catamarans against monohulls?
No.
Okay. If on a passage south, say from northwest Spain to the Canaries, could it be recommended to stay in deep water, say 10 to 20 miles off the coast?
Well, if you look at the evidence, the further offshore you are, the better. Yeah, without a doubt. You know, if you're starting in northwest Spain, start at a time when the orca are elsewhere, because they have been a bit slightly further south. They've been off Lisbon and Porto earlier. That was in March. Now they're all appear to be all down off the Gibraltar Straits, waiting for the tuna. So March would not have been a good time because there is a risk. Now it's pretty good. In 2 months' time, absolutely, you may not want to be anywhere near northwest Spain, because that in the last 2 or 3 years has been the second most busy area.
Right. Somebody says that many boats get away from the attack without damage because they leave the area under full power. Are you going to give this hint? I think we already have.
Yeah. The answer is we're waiting to see what the findings are, because if it works, terrific. You know, we're after anything that works.
Yeah.
Or if it, you know, first of all, we want to try and help crews avoid an interaction at all. You know, lovely though it is to see them off your stern, you know, and they're in a playful mood, you'd really rather not have them in those waters. That's the first thing. The second thing is, if you end up with an interaction, what we want to try and do is give you advice on what to do to minimize the damage and minimize the risk of injury to your crew. So anything that works, if it works, and if it only might work, you know, we'll tell everybody because it might work.
This one's got a typo, and I think I can translate it. Is it recommended to switch off echo lot? I think we mean the depth gauge sender.
Echo sounder doesn't appear to, we thought it did to start with, but now we don't think it does. Doesn't seem to make any difference.
When I first sailed in the west coast of Scotland, an old friend who had been a lighthouse keeper all his life talked of being followed by orca in small boats and warned me they were dangerous. He suggested they protected themselves by pouring petrol on the water. Doesn't work, does it, John?
Well, yeah, but there's a couple of things. First of all, the orca up there are not resident; they're transient. They're the warm mammal-eating orca. Excellent film from David Attenborough in the recent series of them hunting up there. And secondly, as far as we know, they don't really smell. They don't, you know, they haven't got the olfactory receptors. So, and they stay underwater. So I'm not sure quite what the petrol would achieve. And certainly the marine biologists aren't worried about diesel. And they say if you pour diesel, it'll have no effect. So,
and it's illegal under international law. You mentioned traffic light system is updated regularly.
yes.
On orcaiberica.org, somebody can see data from the 29th of April, but presumably you're saying there's none since then.
There's no change. Those are still the dangerous areas. If you look at the latest reports, they're all in that area. They've moved, as I mentioned, as I said to in response to one of the earlier questions, the activities moved slightly north from being closer to the Moroccan coast to being very close to the Spanish coast. But that's exactly what happened this time last year. It's clear that they're waiting there for the tuna to leave the Med.
Somebody's wondering if you think that the protocol is more for protecting the orca than protecting the people.
I know. Well, we've heard this many times, and indeed, it was probably this sort of concern that caused the Cruising Association, you know, my colleagues and I, to get involved in doing what we could to help the sailors. Mm-hmm. So we're not going to do anything to harm orca, but our prime focus is on helping sailors. So that's why we joined GTOA. Well, it was beginning of last year, so it's 16, 17 months ago, with a view to helping sailors. That's what we're in the business of. We're not going to harm orca, but our priority is helping sailors.
If things between orca and the rudder help, then if you're stationary, wouldn't it be worth dangling off as many warps and lines as you can? Not in a bite, but just the ends of the ropes.
It might do. Yeah.
Certainly worth a shot.
Worth a shot, because if it disturbs the sonar pattern of the rudder, from what we're learning, you know, now about sand and the propellers that I said that were after the rudders, it might work.
Okay. Do we have a timescale from the Portuguese government for possible acoustic devices?
No, not at the moment. If we do, whatever we find out, we'll be publicizing on our website.
How far do they travel in a day? I think you've said up to 100 miles, haven't you, John?
About 100 miles. When they're on the move, about 100 miles, yes. Yeah.
There's another person who's suggesting lines or change from the back of the boat might help.
Yeah.
Somebody's saying that orcas are actually marked with some GPS devices in the Barbate area. It would be perfect to see where they are.
Yeah, well, that's the I suspect that's the piece of research that I mentioned earlier, which we know is going on. Yeah, that's the moment. That's where they are. Yes.
Yesterday, this person sailed from La Linea to Cadiz. He stayed all the time close to the coast in less than 20 meters of water and had no interaction with orcas. But precisely in the Barbate area, where the most interactions are taking place at this moment, you had to go into deeper waters because of tuna nets.
Yeah.
The Almadrabas of Sahara, and especially that of Barbate, cannot be passed close to land.
Yeah.
In the case of Barbate, you have to go almost to the port and then sail close to.
Yeah. Almost on the beach there. Yeah. Yeah.
Many apologies for my lack of any Spanish pronunciation skills.
Yeah. Yeah, I can't pronounce it either, but I do know exactly what it is. If you could, you can get between those nets and the shore in settled weather, but it's not easy. You know, that's the bit where you've got to come out round, and one or two boats have been caught there. So if you can squeeze between the nets and the shore, seems to be safer, but the weather's got to be right.
Question: how do you pour sand between the rudder and the orca when the rudder is inset down the center line? Do you pour it off the stern or the side?
Yeah, off the stern is what we've been told they're doing.
One orca has died after being tagged in the United States. Infection is a real problem.
Yeah, which is what I said. Yeah, we know that, and as far as I'm pretty certain, it's the Spanish government through one of their departments that's funding the tagging project. Don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty certain it is. But I know that when they're planning that, this was one of the concerns that they had.
There are no orca attacks to humans. What do you think about swimming around the stern with the orcas to protect our rudder?
Well, there is no record of orca in the wild attacking a human or injuring a human. However, some of the reports on the way that they approach the boat suggest that orca come in there. These are animals that they weigh several tons, coming in at very, very high speed. If they make a mistake and hit you before the boat, then I suspect the injuries that a person would get would be significant. So not something that I would rush to do, I don't think, even though they're pretty safe in terms of interaction with humans. If they were only being curious and playful, it might be all right. But if your particular interaction, they're coming in for an attack, then the risks, I would have thought, would be quite significant.
Yes, it's not worth taking the risk, I think, is the answer, really.
Well, I wouldn't. No.
Can we make the rudders so they can't detect them using their acoustics in any way? Stealth-shaped rudder.
Well, it's possible. Yeah, it's possible, but I'm not aware of anybody looking at it at the moment.
Somebody's asked for the orca location on Telegram, and somebody's responded. It's at www.orcas.pt. But again, we would urge everybody to report in detail, in scientific detail, on our website, so the full data can be collected and analysed. A simple report saying I went from here to here and didn't have any problem is not really of any use to us in analysing the full behaviour.
Yeah, and absolutely right. No, we've got, we're aware of these other facilities, and and we're supporting each other. I've said these are good capabilities to let you know what's happening now, and they know that we're the best repository of full data for ongoing analysis.
Are there any tuna maps then try to predict where they may go and help with planning?
Yeah. Well, we got caught by that last year. The answer is yes, but the tuna sometimes change their behaviour. So we, on the basis of what the tuna were expected to do, and on the basis of the interactions in 2020 and 2021, we mapped where we thought the interactions were going to be last year, and they weren't. They were much further north, much more quickly. And in fact, they went right the way up to off Brest, was the most northerly. So it gives you an indication, but we got caught last year.
Boats that were sunk, were they aluminium or GRP or steel, or do we know?
No, they're GRP, but we have had an aluminium boat quite seriously damaged earlier this year.
Since we're suspecting that noise is one of the factors, do we have any data on how many boats with electrical drives have been affected? Sorry, have been attacked, this questioner says, or a comparison of boats en route on engine versus on under sail?
Right, engine under sail, we do have. We've got all our reports. They say whether they're motoring or motor sailing or sailing. Yeah, we've got that, but not electric drive. We haven't separated that out at this stage.
Right. So when's the best time to leave the UK to head across Biscay and down to the Med? We're planning for a spring 24 or 25. Do we need to wait until June when the tuna head out?
No, I mean the reality is the safest way is to do it in stages and travel where, for example, at the moment you're safe in Biscay and the Portuguese coast. You weren't in March, but you are now. So, and then wait until they move north, and then you'd be safe in South Portugal and South Spain for a period. That's the safest way of doing it, I think, at the moment. Or there is some suggestion that you could go swing much further out towards the Azores, not to the Azores, but towards the Azores, much further west than the interactions, and then come in on the African coast later in the season.
You keep saying that the orca go for the rudders, and that's what this questioner thought as well. But recently started hearing testimonies of people reporting how they're coming also to the hull at straight angle. So no doubt. Is this something we should start being concerned about? Attacks to the hull of the boat.
I've not seen any reports of that recently. There have been one or two, but not recently. I read all the reports. All the interaction reports, and I check them to make sure that, because quite often the skippers are highly stressed when they make the report. They don't always give us an accurate location, say. So I just check to make sure that's realistic. And then I remove all the personal information so that they're anonymized, and then I make the decision to publish. And I haven't seen that recently.
Are you aware of CIRCE's hypothesis and their investigations and advice? They're doing incredible work right now in the Strait, and I think that should be shared too.
I'm presuming CIRC.
CIRCE.
I'm presuming that's the tagging research that I'm talking about, and the where they're driving off to the shore. That's the only work. I mean, they are in that area, and I presume that's the only research I'm aware of that's been funded. If there's something else, then we need to know. Can they let us know about it at the CA, and we'll look into it.
More questions about preferable rudders, keg or spade. I think we've answered that. Do they attack hydrogenerators like Watton Sea?
No. People have had them out, and it's going back to the can you distract them with a ball? But it seems that they know what they're going for.
Yes.
And they don't seem to go for the hydrogenerators.
Another question says there's an attack between Sesimbra and Signs only 3 miles off the coast. This is shallow, so not always a solution.
3 miles off, but yeah, but we're saying 2 miles. It's it's. I mean, there will be at about 3 or 4 miles. There are a few, but most of the interactions are in deeper water. You're safer. You're not completely safe if you're in the areas with the orca. There's nothing we've got that says you're absolutely safe. Well, yeah, don't travel there. That makes you absolutely safe. But otherwise, all we're saying is you're safer if.
Is it true that the Spanish and Portuguese rescue agencies will come to fetch you but won't tow your boat anymore? Also, the questioner's experiences there's no response to a pan, only to maydays. Is this official policy, do we know? Right.
We're not sure that it's official policy, but as far as we know, they're being towed. In fact, the boat that sank only last month, that was under tow. So as far as we know, they're being towed. We've not heard anything to the contrary. We have had reports of, should we say, less than rapid response to some radio calls. Yeah. We have, skippers have experienced that and reported it.
We talk about the risk to orca, but every skipper has a duty of care for their crew. When does the risk to the crew outweigh the risk to the orca? Animals in the wild that have caused human injury are often put down. Is the approach to orcas different for a reason?
Well, the answer is, at the moment, no person, no human has been injured, which is fortunate. And the moment that one does get seriously injured, or there's a tragedy and someone dies, then there is a real risk of the whole dynamic change. And everybody's aware of this. Government bodies, sailing bodies, marine biologists, everybody's very aware that the dynamic will change if there's a tragedy like that. Yeah, and the answer is it's for each skipper. We understand that.
Somebody commenting about comment one of us made. They're illegal, but they might work. And he's suggesting that his CA membership he may resign his CA membership. I think we may need to clarify what we mean.
Sorry, what's the?
I think this is in relation to pingers. We may have said they're illegal, but they might work.
No. What I said was no. Pingers. They're illegal because at the moment none of them work on a frequency or at a power that's appropriate for orca. But the evidence is that by the boats that have had them, and have had interactions and been damaged, that at the moment they don't seem to work, is what I said. Yeah, there's two boats, a French boat, both French boats that were damaged with pingers.
Yeah. And so we're not saying that they will work.
No, we've got no evidence that they they work at all. No.
And we would not condone their use.
No. The evidence we've got is that they don't work.
Would it help to take your dinghy out with 6 to 20 horsepower engine and drive madly behind around your boat, weather dependent, of course?
Yeah, well, it might. Yeah,
it might. But could put you at risk as well.
Yeah. Yeah, it might.
Well, watching companies have seen orca in the Strait right now and claim it's unusual. Normally, they are only seen in the Strait in August.
No, that's not right at all. If you look at the GTOA historical sites, there's been interactions in the Gibraltar Straits this time of year for the last couple of years.
The suggestion of putting something in between the rudder and the back of the boat. Recently seen an owner of a steel yacht welding horizontal vanes on his rudder, presumably to make them less biteable. Yeah. Say spikes, or maybe a light chain trailing after the rudder. I wouldn't condone spikes, but certainly something to interfere.
That's what it might change the shape, and so they won't recognise it, which is what happened. What the propeller and the sand caused. Possible, yeah, it's possible.
If sound is relevant, would a waterproof speaker lowered into the water, blasting out the Sex Pistols or some such, have any effect?
It might do. Yeah, but what if they're Sex Pistols fans? So you may have to have a number of options of music. Yeah, but a loudspeaker with a loud noise might work. I don't know.
There's live footage of fishing boat being holed, and there is an incentive for fishermen not to report interactions as they are then impounded for checks. Are these factors being considered and investigated?
Well, all I can say is that, we haven't had reports or any leads to do with motorboats. That's all I can tell you. We can only work with the information and data that we're getting. If people know more, then submit reports or encourage the submitting of reports. Then we've got the data. Then we can do something with it. Part of the problem has been, someone secondhand information. Someone says that they saw something happen, or tells reports, or exaggerates things, or misunderstands. And that's why we've got open data. We collect accurate information, make it available to everybody, so that we can dilute rumours.
Can we send the slides to the people attending? No, we wouldn't do that, but we are going to publish a recording of this seminar on our website and on YouTube, probably next week. I'm just scooting through them, John, because there are a lot of duplicate questions.
Yeah.
The answer to this question, your answer to this question was no. Do you have enough data yet to understand the percentage of attacks on catamarans against monohulls?
No.
Could you advise how many of your 120 plus interaction reports came from catamarans?
No, we don't collect that at the moment.
Right.
No. If there's a reason why we should, we can change the questionnaire. We do record boats with more than one rudder, but not because it's not the hull that's important. It's the rudders. unless we find that there's something about the shape of the hull which creates a sound that attracts orca, then so we you know, we've learned at the moment that we follow you know, possible leads, and then try and collect data to see whether the ideas are valid or not. And at the moment, hull shape doesn't appear to be a factor.
Somebody making another comment. I will translate it for goodness sake. Tell people not to pour petrol in the water. We did. Or diesel for that matter.
Yeah.
Can pepper spray work? It works against bears. Solution to spray the pepper spray directly into the blowpipe. I think that would be illegal. John?
Oh, would have thought so. And the chances of being able to do it successfully very slight.
Mm-hmm.
They're moving fast, and by the time they get they're that close, the blowholes are not open. No.
Are we going to recommend people?
I mean, it's illegal to try to harm an orca at the moment, and so you can't.
Long may that continue.
Yeah.
Are we going to recommend people motor sail in the hotspot areas?
Well, at the moment, the data we're collecting doesn't suggest that motor sailing or sailing, that any of them is more dangerous than or more risky than the other. If it does, then we'll examine it. But the current piece of research, if it says motor off at speed to the shore, if it says that that's definitely what you should do, then you need the most powerful engine you can and get out of it. But we don't know yet. The work's going on at the moment.
Somebody who suffered an orca attack last year, the word he uses, off the coast of Portugal. I can second the advice and information given in this webinar. Thank you for the effort you put in. Luckily, we could do the repairs in a week and continue our journey. Some lost months by the damage. My tip to fellow sailors would be, don't let your planning get to the last day, so you've got some room for setbacks like these attacks. Yeah,
that's really good advice, actually. Yeah, really good advice. I'm sorry they had the interaction, but pleased they got on the move fairly smartly, because some boats are taking a long time to repair, partly because of spares and partly that some of the boatyards got overwhelmed last year.
Somebody else who's saying you should mention that the total number of attacks is higher than the numbers that we have, especially in the beginning, like in 2020. I met several sailors who'd been attacked and did not report because there was no means to report it anywhere, presumably in 2020.
And that's absolutely right. And it's still happening now, though. There are still people who are announcing it on Facebook, but not submitting a full report. We try and get back to them and try and encourage them. I say we, one of the team does, to try and encourage them to report, because it's only with a full report that we can get some decent analysis done. Yeah, so we're still, even now, there have been a few that GTOA are aware of that we haven't got reports for.
And this is the final question. The Organised website shows a huge amount of recent interactions reported by either BDRI or Renaud de Stephanis, which both conduct research in the Western Gib Strait. Doesn't this distort statistics towards more interactions than ever?
We're not getting distorted data reports, full reports. I am aware of that, the research that motorboats, the scientists and that motorboat are doing. I'm not aware of them submitting reports that are distorting data at the moment.
And finally, John, there are lots of thanks to you for putting this webinar together, to which I would like to add my thanks on behalf of the CA for the work you're doing. And as there are no further questions, and we are 8 minutes before the end, so I think what we'll do is we'll now say thank you very much, John, and thank you everybody for attending, and we will close the webinar down. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much, Simon.
Right, goodbye. Good night.